Hello everyone, here is a quick demonstration of using MIDI effects. This is the first one of two about MIDI effects. This one will be specifically about using the built-in arpeggiator in Logic Pro. So what is a MIDI effect? Well, you may be, of course, familiar with regular audio effects. That's things like reverb, delay, echo, chorus, all kinds of stuff. And those type of effects are affecting or changing the actual audio that whatever a track is playing. You can add a special effect to that. MIDI effects are different in that they're only specifically affecting the MIDI data. As you should know by now, MIDI information is not audio. MIDI information is simply saying, what note do I play? How long does it last? How hard did I hit it? That type of stuff. Because when a track receives that information, here are the notes to play, it then sends it to whatever instrument is assigned, say synthesizer, and then that instrument performs it right there when you hit play. So what a MIDI effect does is basically to basically transform the MIDI information that is already on the track and to do different stuff to it. So I've added a track here. This is a software instrument. So for MIDI effects, you definitely have to have a software instrument select. They won't work for audio or drum or anything like that. So I've got a software instrument selected. I'm going to go ahead and go to instrument. I could definitely go into my library and choose find a sound that way, but I like to actually choose the instrument that is a synthesizer or sampler they're going to play and then find a preset that way. Then I have a little more control over it myself. So I'm going to use retro synth. This is one that comes with Logic. It's just a basic synth, has different ways, different types of synthesis formats. That's why it kind of looks different based on what tab that you click on. I'm just going to use this basic analog one, see what the sound sounds like. So this could work. What you want for an arpeggiator sound is something that has a fast attack. That is, when you strike the key, how fast does the sound actually sound? So that's almost immediate. If I slowed that down, then I might have like a wah. In other words, I'll go here to the attack, slow it down. So it's like it creeped in after I hit the key, which would not work well for an arpeggiator at all. You want something with a fast attack. Now it could have a slow release like this, where when I let go, it kind of doesn't immediately stop. But also, it could be either. The release could be long or short for an arpeggiator. It's all about the attack. So this sound will work just as well as any for an arpeggiator. And to add an arpeggiator, I go to the MIDI effects slot, which you will, again, only see if you're using a software instrument. So if I click MIDI effects and then I choose arpeggiator, top of the list, I get this instrument. Now what an arpeggiator is, I'm going to turn it off for a second, is an arpeggiation is taking a chord, such as this, and basically breaking it up. So I'm going to play like the lowest note, the middle note, the highest note. So that is playing individual notes, but our brains want to kind of connect those together. And the faster I play it, the more it'll connect it together. Or really hear a chord. I can kind of test that by just changing one note, and you probably will hear the chord change. So we don't really hear that as a single note like a melody. We're still kind of hearing it as a chord. And the faster I play, the more it even sounds like a chord. Kind of think of like when you strum a guitar, you're really playing one string at a time. It's just really fast. So we kind of hear it all at once, even though that was really like bum, 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 really quickly. So an arpeggiator will do this for you. I can play, I could do one note, but really more than one note or chords or whatever I want to do, and it's going to basically create the arpeggiation from me, or for me. The best way to kind of hear it is just to turn this thing on, even at its default type of setting. If I played one note, I would hear just kind of a repeating pattern. But if I play more than one note, maybe a chord, I would hear something like this. Again, you can hear that chord change as I moved notes. I can change how fast that is. It's right now on 16th note, tied into Logic's tempo. So if I were to change this to be faster, 120 beats per minute, it would play that pattern faster. So it's definitely dependent on what your tempo is when you have this set to a specific rate. You can see from that list lots of stuff from triplets, but I have whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes. Again, this is why we had to at the beginning of the semester learn what these fractions mean. That is a whole note, 1/1. 1/8 is eighth note. 1/32nd, 64th, 128th. That's going to be fast. And we kind of get into the 1980s video game sound because that's how they could only play one note at a time with those early type of computer programs. So they would have to arpeggiate really fast so that you could hear a chord like this. And that was like, you finished the level or whatever. So I can put this on whatever rhythm I want. To the right, you also see that I have direction buttons. So this is going to arpeggiate up from lowest note to highest note. I can do it downward, up and down, meeting in the middle, kind of randomly jumping around where it goes. Now beyond the directions, you also have variations of patterns where they're going to, again, vary it by going up. And I can also change the octave range. In other words, how many notes is it going to play above or below this of the same notes, but adding that without me having to play them. So for example, if I play that single note, and then I made that 2 octaves, sounds like an 80s bass line now suddenly if I put it down low. Whatever. Or I could do 3 octaves. So that starts getting pretty fun when you say randomize that, make it 3 octaves, and you just play a chord. So you can have a lot of fun with those various patterns. I can also turn on this little latch button, which basically allows me to play a chord. And I don't have to hold it down. It's kind of like a sustain pedal. So if I just want to be able to leave them on without me holding it down the whole time, I can just kind of start changing notes. Now I was playing chords, but really you could do it with any type of multi-pitch stuff. So I'm just going to hold down like all the white keys within an octave. Now it's doing 3 octaves, so that was super high, but I could just do the octave. Or I could add some black keys in there. But because it's going up, it's maybe not as interesting. If I do one of these other pattern things, now much more interesting. Plus I could play with these variations. Sounds like another, like a 80s kind of movie with some, I don't know, some bad stuff about that. So you can do a lot of this stuff with a step sequencer, but the arpeggiator is pretty cool because it's so simple to just play and it'll do a lot of things. Now, if I want to record something, I of course need to make sure my metronome's on if I don't have any other type of beat, like a drum loop or something playing. It's also playing 16th notes, so I'll kind of feel the pattern, but I'm ready to go, and I'm just going to start playing some stuff, and you'll see kind of what's recorded when I do that. Okay, so I was just kind of just messing around playing things. Notice that once I've stopped playing, when you go back and look at what the MIDI information was, by the way, I'm just going to quantize that to the quarter note. I wasn't changing anything except on the beat, so it just straightens everything up a little bit better. But if I were, let's get rid of this for now, if I were to double click on this to see the details, okay, I was just holding down a bunch of notes for 1, 2, 3, even 4 beats at a time. The arpeggiator was doing the heavy lifting and changing all the notes for me. Let's listen to it again. So it's playing back exactly how I did with the arpeggiator. Now, every single time I hit play, the arpeggiator is essentially being triggered by the note value and playing it. So in other words, I haven't recorded what the arpeggiator is doing. I've just recorded what notes are being pushed through the arpeggiator. That means that at any point I could say, well, I like all these chords, but I want this to be eighth note triplets instead. And of course, I can change any variations. I can experiment with all of this stuff. And obviously then I could say, well, I do want some interesting effects in here. I do need to add a delay. Let's actually do a tape delay. And I could start having fun with, the value of, if I do, say, a dotted quarter note. Let's see what that rhythm changes. Get some interesting go, and that's just adding some delay in there as well. So it's a really interesting and fun thing to do. Arpeggiators were really very popular as one of the earliest kind of effects you could do on a synthesizer. Was to program stuff, but then when they add an arpeggiator, it's like, oh, this is neat. I can just hold down stuff and it'll do the work for me. Arpeggiators go in and out of style as far as popularity and being used. And generally speaking, you wouldn't necessarily want to use an arpeggiator except in a really active part. They're very busy, right? So you maybe if you were going to use one, maybe it's only used, say, in a chorus where the vocal part, kind of backs away. They're singing fewer words, holding notes longer maybe, but the instruments are suddenly kind of taking over. So maybe that'd be effective, or maybe only in the bridge or something like that. If you had it all the time, it just kind of starts getting stale pretty quickly if you're just constantly hearing this arpeggiated thing. So definitely should be used in a limited way. But very fun and lots of stuff you can do. The only thing I didn't really show you is that you can actually go into kind of this grid mode where I can actually do the similar thing where I'm kind of setting up a pattern that I want these things to play. So again, I'm going to now play an actual chord. So instead of it just doing straight 16th notes, I could actually have it do an irregular pattern, but it's still arpeggiating up and down or whatever direction, whatever settings that I've done. So it's really fun. You can easily get lost. I'll just warn you now. You might suddenly be like, oh, I've been messing around with this arpeggiator for the last hour, especially if you've never played with one before. It's very fun. So have some fun with that.